Hi, this is János Real World Audio and welcome to my Christmas special episode. And it is Christmas special because I have received, now that I'm reading back what I have missed, I received a lot of very kind comments and sharings during this 2024 Christmas. And I would like to say thank you to all of you who wished me Merry Christmas, and especially to Frank, Hugo, Tiago, Gerald, and it's really fantastic. I think that's the best part of this channel. What I really love about it the most is to get that I have come to know you, and sadly mostly just through the ether, only virtually, but I feel that you are all very close to me, and it's really wonderful to have friends on many continents, and we can share ideas, thoughts, and have a very beneficial and good friendship. So now, what I'm doing now is I will be perusing your comments, and these Christmas comments were really fantastic, and that's why I want to talk about them. There was a Neil O'Brien's comment. I was wondering if AI could be used to design a 2-watt set amplifier, and actually a few minutes ago in my time I just made a video on that. I really followed up on it, and I had AI design a 2-watt set amplifier, and the result is absolutely mind-blowing, so stay tuned for that. And thank you, Rick. What he was suggesting is the Mullard 510 schematics and the Dynaco Stereo 35, and he recommended it with a few tweaks on them and a stiffer power supply, and that I would call either of these, if you build these, the ultimate EL84 amp, whatever that means. Or I would say they would be like absolutely wonderful EL84 amplifier that I would just personally love to listen to, and probably, I think I will probably, given if I have enough time, I will in my life, I plan to, and I want to build one of these. What exactly Rick was talking about? I have a bunch of EL84s, and it would be a joy to build an amp with such topology. And Frank has just absolutely wonderful sharings every time. It's a joy to hear from you, Frank. For those of you who don't know about Frank Geretz, he is one of the masters, and whom I consider masters and mentors, and he is one of the few people who have that kind of really amazing experience about audio that you reach when you spend a lifetime with audio, and when you ask Frank a question, his answer is going to be an answer that's built on a lifetime of experience, and not just experience but wisdom, synthetic knowledge, and he's also recommending 7 to 9K optimum for EL84 in push-pull. And I have to tell you guys, he has more experience with EL84 than I have, and it's very reassuring for me that he confirmed that what I think the 8K, that was my hunch, that it's the it might be something really good for EL84, in push-pull, and he confirmed that it is. Thank you, Frank. And he shared this warning with you, and I would really like to just emphasize it, that about the output transformer is that it really depends on your loudspeaker what the optimum impedance, optimum primary of your output transformer is. That when you hit the right point with your specific loudspeaker or the one you are matching with, then that it will just click in, and it will just be, it's not like a difference between 7, 8 or 9 kilo ohm, like a tiny incremental difference, but suddenly the sound will gain, or I would say not just the sound, but the experience you get by listening to that setup will gain a quality that it did not have before. And it's not like it will be like 10% better or 20, or sometimes you try to rationalize out what's the difference between them, but it will make the difference between a good sound and sound where you can get to enjoy music and connect to music in a deep way you didn't think possible before. So that's why he is looking for that if you don't think that your amp is good enough, or what is the optimal output transformer, it most often people accuse the amplifier of not being good enough, but many times a lot of amplifiers are vastly undervalued by audiophiles, or people think they are not worth to look at because they were tested in environments without synergy. And sadly, that's what I've been noticing, that most people, when they look at a really finely done EL84 amplifier, they try to pair it with a loudspeaker that has absolutely bad synergy with it, that is optimized for something very different, it's optimized for, like, let's say, like a 5000 watt Dan D'Agostino amplifier and current hungry speakers. And it's not just like the current hungry aspect of the loudspeaker, but a loudspeaker which has a synergy with that kind of amplification, that in that case you will feel that this amplifier is inadequate to drive those speakers, and you will post online, it has potential, but it's an inadequate amplifier. And however, the real thing was that the loudspeaker was inadequate for the amp. It goes both ways. It's not just that the EL84 is inadequate for that specific loudspeaker in question, but you can flip it around, and it is also true that the loudspeaker was absolutely massively inadequate to get the best out of your amplifier. So, and I'm here not telling you which one to choose, or what kind of amplifier to choose, what kind of speaker to choose, but when you hear a mismatch between speaker and amplifier, it doesn't mean that one or the other is good or bad. It simply means that you pick either of the pair, and then you are hearing just a fraction of what they could do. And when you find the synergy between amplifier and loudspeaker, that's when the world opens up. And this is just really amazing, and I think people will freak out now. I have an amp, an EL84 amp, that uses partridge output transformers, and the response goes down to 4 Hz. Fun thing, because this thing can reproduce the impact of the feet of the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. And see and feel the water in your glass tremble, even at moderate levels. Great fun. And just to tell you guys that I wanted to read this out loud, because it doesn't, people think that to have this type of experience you must have that 5,000, you must have current hungry loudspeakers. No, you can reach this with an EL84 push-pull amp. And and then next thing that Frank shared with us is that the new old stock tubes are expensive but really worthwhile. I have old radios, one of them has an EL84 Philips inside from 1959, baked brown but still singing, and needless to replace the tube. Why is he writing that? He's writing it because that's been my experience as well, that new old stock tubes, the ones that were made back at the time when these tubes were developed, so by now they're like half a century old or even older. And then there is like a lot of talk saying like, are new production tubes, how do they compare against older tubes? And for a while there was like a dependability issue, that the old made tubes are generally, like 10 years ago, used to be just vastly superior in longevity and stability, operational stability. Longevity, like how long your tube lives. They used to be massively better than modern tubes. Modern tubes used to be catastrophic at tube life, like really like 1 year, and then that's it. And then you could not, that's what you could expect from like Russian and Chinese tubes like 20 years ago. Nowadays I heard it's better. I cannot say anything. I haven't purchased a newly manufactured tube in the last 20 years, so I cannot say anything about that. I have like new old stock tubes to last me 200 lifetimes, and so that's why I don't think I need to invest in any new tubes, because I have no need for that. I have to add though that the tubes I have are really bizarre, and a lot of them are tubes that no one heard anything about, some really oddball tubes. But I think that's something that I will get into one day, just like going to my tube stash and picking out tubes no one ever heard of, or very few, maybe you are really into DIY, know about those, and just build amplifiers with that. And what I learned in my audio journey is that you can pick unknown tubes and have absolutely great sound out of them, and we don't need to go for special tubes that are used in audio, which have become very expensive because the need for them is great, and then the number of available tubes are diminishing of that tube type, and that's what drives the prices up. And of course, this is a very long subject to expand, but what Frank tells us here, and what I would like to emphasize, is it is worth to hunt down a pair of NOS tubes, even though they are expensive. But if you have the right schematics, right amplifier, then they can live in that vacuum tube amplifier for 10 years, 20 years. Like when you look at my amps that I have in my living room, or this little amplifier, the tubes in them, I've been using those tubes for 25 years, and they're the same power tubes, and they're still good and sound perfect and wonderful. So if you do not stress your tubes, it means that you just have an investment once, and then you have those same power tubes, and unless you physically break them, they will probably last as long as you live. And he said, Frank says, exceptional tubes are the NOS E84L, that's the European name for the tube, equals the 7320, that's the US nomenclature. So when you see these 4 numbers, it means that these are US military tubes. So these were the variants that were built for military use. And when you see that, the difference between that and commercial use is that these military tubes, the 4-digit numbers, are a lot more reliable and made to be a lot more rugged and a lot more consistent than the versions which were used with letter and number combinations. So the commercial US version was the 6BQ5 of this tube, and the 7320 is the military version of the 6BQ5. And the EL84 is the European version, and the E84L is the special European, the high quality version of the EL84. And the 6P14EV, that's the Russian version of this tube. And I never used this tube, but I've heard a lot of comments that people who try them often like them even better than the American versions. So keep an eye on any of these tubes, or this one, EL84 Philips. These are absolutely very, very highly recommended of these tube types. As told by Jean Hiraga, EL84 is the 300B for the poor man. So for all of you guys who want 300B amplifier, but it's not in your budget to afford like the Western Electric tubes and the more expensive output transformers for 300B, and maybe you want to DIY it, but you don't want to deal with these very high voltages in the 300B amps and the added complexity which goes with the DHT single-ended triodes, or dealing with the hum issues you have to deal with that, or even like dealing with driving the 300B. Most people go wrong with 300B amp design and implementation. They go wrong with the driver stage and drive with it, because the 300B requires an astonishingly stiff driver to drive the tube. And if you don't have that, that's when what happens when that people report is that 300B has no bass or has flabby sound, and it's not the problem of the 300B, it's the problem of an inadequate driver. And guys, guess what? One of an excellent driver tube for the 300B is the EL84. So if you build a 300B amplifier, you can use it by driving the 300B with an EL84, and it will be absolutely fantastic 300B amplifier. And if you just don't have that kind of resources, or if you want to build a simpler amplifier but you want the 300B sound, you can use the EL84 as to have a similar result. It won't sound the same as the 300B amp, but it will have that kind of delicacy in the mid-range, and will give you that type of what I call magical sound. Like the 300B to me has this magic in it, that especially for the mid-range and the vocals, how and not just vocals, to me it's also in the symphonic. When you listen to like I listen to a symphonic concert on an orchestra on a 300B, it just sucks my mind into the experience, and after like a minute or so I stop listening for the sound, and the sound doesn't matter anymore. It's just like I just go into the music and I live in the music, and the EL84 can do the exact same thing. And of course it sounds a little bit different from the 300B, but it has that kind of quality that it brings you that kind of magic. And I would also add that the 2A3 is also something similar to that, and but the 2A3 tube is doesn't have as much magic as the 300B, but it's a lot more easier to implement, and most 2A3 amplifiers, even though like they are just half or a third of the power of a 300B amp, but most of them has much better bass than the 300B, because they are much easier to drive. And to me the 2A3 has that kind of quality as the EL84 has, that you can listen to any kind of music. So these two, like the 2A3 and EL84, you can like rock and roll, jazz, classical, vocal, anything, it will be absolutely fabulous. And for 300B, for most people, is mostly vocals. Unless you have an exceptional driver with the 300B, then it opens up to a more wider range of music where it absolutely shines. Yeah, so, and what Frank also shared, and I think this is where I will end this video, this Christmas sharing, is that if I had the budget, I would buy Japanese output transformer for this amplifier. And yes, I totally second Frank on that, because today you can also buy like either like a budget American or European transformers, which would be my choice, my recommendation now if you can't afford the Japanese output transformers. Because they are second to the magic of what a good Japanese output transformer does, without lacking a lot of the higher quality to it. And you can also buy budget Chinese output transformers, which are like appear to be as high quality as the Japanese output transformers, because they're like amorphous core or nickel core, really exotic materials, and like you can, for example, the ones I bought, like those amorphous core Chinese transformers using British iron, British lamination, that I got, those double C core transformers that I'm using now at home in my living room, that I shared about. They have the detail level, they have absolutely tremendous dynamic range, they have amazing frequency extension, but there's no soul, there's no magic to the sound. And with certain gimmicks I am able to have, and especially after like letting them break in for a very long time now, over half a year, they are tame to a certain degree, but I cannot recommend them at all. If you want you really need to get like high quality just Japanese output transformers if you want that magic in your amplifier, because even though it's really tempting to buy those really cheap transformers, they won't give you what these more expensive products, sadly more expensive, but it's more expensive because there was so much research put into their development, and that's the difference. These Chinese transformers, what you can buy today, are designed by really brilliant guys. My hat's off to those who make those output transformers, because it's totally mind-blowing how can they make it so cheap. And what they do is that they took high quality transformers, they cut them apart, and they reverse engineered what the British engineers, what the Japanese engineers did to create those output transformers, and then they recreated them. So replicating that, they are doing absolutely stellar job, and they are learning year by year. They are progressing leaps and bounds But where those Tango and Hashimoto are with their transformers, they already have like a 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years of knowledge of doing that. And China is now catching up with their 5, 10, maybe 15 years of experience with that. And they are like half a century behind of figuring out the nuances, those really tiny things, what makes the tone. And when you design an output transformer, just getting frequency extension, just getting clarity, depth, things like that is very easy. You will just need just quality parts and knowing how to wind, how to split the windings, and how to do the interleaving, where etc. And when you figure that out, you can have like dynamic range and bass response, etc. But to figure out the tonal quality to it, that takes a lifetime of experimenting with the materials, the exact type of copper. And I think just a hunch for the Chinese engineers is that the copper is the copper wire they use in their transformers, and the materials for the insulation between them is one of the secret sauce where they have to improve to reach the level of the coveted output transformers. So thank you, Frank, and I hope you also had a wonderful, peaceful Christmas, and I wish you and I wish everyone an absolutely fantastic 2025. Thank you. Bye bye.